The smell of fresh coffee couldn't mask the stench of their betrayal. I stood frozen in my own kitchen doorway, watching my husband Mark and his family hunched over blueprints spread across our dining table. They hadn't noticed me yet, too absorbed in their grand plans for my father's land. The parking structure could easily fit 300 spaces, Travis said, jabbing his finger at the paper. Conservative estimate puts revenue at 6 figures annually. My father wasn't even cold in his grave. Lydia will come around. My mother-in-law Patricia's voice dripped with false sweetness. Once she sees how much sense it makes financially. I gripped my car keys until they bit into my palm. Mark nodded along with them, like the puppet he'd always been. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never seen him so clearly as I did in that moment. The environmental survey might be an issue, Mark said, running his hand through his hair. His tell when he's nervous. Harold was particular about preservation. Your father-in-law is dead, Mark. Patricia's words cut through the air. It's time to think about the living. The living, like vultures circling a carcass. I let my keys drop onto the counter with a clatter. 3 heads snapped up in perfect synchronization. If I wasn't so angry, I might have laughed. Lydia. Mark straightened, trying to gather the papers. You're home early. Clearly. I walked to the table, each step measured. Don't stop on my account. I'm fascinated by how you're planning to carve up my inheritance. Travis had the decency to look uncomfortable. Patricia didn't bother hiding her ambition behind a mask of shame. We were going to discuss this with you, dear. Over dinner tonight. How thoughtful. I picked up one of the drawings. Neat lines and numbers replaced the wildflowers and oak trees my father had protected for decades. And when exactly did you start planning this? Before or after the funeral? Now, Lydia. Mark stepped toward me, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. This could be good for everyone. Your father's land has been sitting unused. Unused? The word tasted like poison. That land is home to 3 endangered species. Dad spent his life protecting it. But I suppose you knew that when you married me, didn't you, Mark? Playing the long game? Patricia's perfectly lined lips thinned. Don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you make sensible decisions during a difficult time. I looked at each of them in turn. My brother-in-law with his desperate ambition, my mother-in-law with her calculating eyes, and my husband with his weak excuses. The betrayal settled into my bones like ice. Get out. My voice was steady, surprising even me. All of you. Lydia. Mark started. I said, get out. I slammed my hand on the table, sending coffee cups rattling. And take your vulture convention with you. They gathered their papers in tense silence. Patricia paused at the door, her designer purse clutched like a shield. You're being unreasonable. Think about Mark's position in the family. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. Oh, I am thinking about positions, Patricia. More than you know. After they left, I stood in my empty kitchen, my father's voice echoing in my memory. Sometimes, Butterfly, the people closest to us cast the longest shadows. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's lawyer. Mr. Phillips, it's Lydia Bennett. We need to talk about my father's will. Immediately. The game they wanted to play? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was Harold Thompson's daughter, and he taught me more than just how to preserve wildflowers. Mr. Phillips's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same leather chairs, same dusty law books, same faint smell of pipe tobacco, though he'd quit long before I was born. The familiarity should have been comforting. It wasn't. Your father was very specific about the land's future, he said, sliding a thick manila envelope across his desk. The will is ironclad. I traced my finger along the envelope's edge. They'll fight it. The Bennetts? He removed his reading glasses, polishing them with deliberate care. They already have. Patricia called this morning, suggesting your father wasn't of sound mind when he made his final arrangements. The rage I'd been containing since yesterday sparked again. Of course she did. She also mentioned your emotional state, Suggested you might need help managing the inheritance. I barked out a laugh that held no humor. Let me guess, she volunteered? Along with Travis as co-executor. He replaced his glasses, fixing me with a steady gaze. Your father anticipated this, Lydia. Open the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, but what caught my eye was a handwritten letter in Dad's familiar scrawl. My throat tightened as I unfolded it. The office door opened before I could read it. Mark stood there, looking uncomfortable in his pressed suit and tie. Sorry I'm late. You weren't invited. The words came out sharper than I intended. Or maybe exactly as sharp as I intended. I'm still your husband. He closed the door, taking the seat beside me. We need to discuss this as a family. Like you discussed the parking lot plans with me? Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give you two a moment. No. I straightened in my chair. Mark can hear this with everyone else at the official reading. Unless he'd like to explain why his signature is on development proposals dated 3 months ago? Mark's face paled. How did you... Your brother talks too much when he's excited. I turned back to the lawyer. When can we schedule the reading? Thursday at 2. I'll notify all parties. He hesitated. Lydia, your father also left something in the safe. For your eyes only. Mark shifted beside me. As her husband? For her eyes only, Mr. Phillips repeated firmly, standing to enter the combination on a wall safe I'd never noticed before. He retrieved a small wooden box, weathered and familiar. Dad's treasure box, he'd called it. The sight of it knocked the wind from my lungs. I'll need a moment, I managed to say. Mark touched my arm. Lydia. I jerked away. Alone. After they left, I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a stack of photographs. The land through the seasons, wildflowers in bloom, deer at dawn. Beneath them, a USB drive and another letter. My butterfly. If you're reading this, they've already shown their cards. The drive contains everything you need. Proof of Patricia's gambling debts, Travis's failed ventures, the money they've borrowed against properties they don't own. Your mother always said I was too trusting. I wasn't. I was waiting. Remember what I taught you about chess. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. All my love, Dad. I pressed the letter to my chest, a laugh bubbling up that might have been a sob. Even from the grave, he was protecting me. Protected me by arming me with exactly what I needed. When I emerged from the office, Mark was pacing the hallway. We need to talk about this. No. I walked past him, clutching the box. We needed to talk 3 months ago when you first signed those papers. We needed to talk last week when your mother started calling real estate developers. We needed to talk yesterday, before I found you all plotting over my father's legacy like vultures. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I stopped at the elevator, finally meeting his eyes. You know what the worst part is, Mark? Dad saw it coming. He knew what your family would do, probably before I even married you. And he made sure I'd be ready. The elevator doors opened. As I stepped in, I saw Mark's reflection in the polished metal. Lost, confused, and for the first time afraid. Good. He should be, because this wasn't just about protecting the land anymore. This was about justice. And I was just getting started. Patricia's dining room felt like a stage set. Everything arranged for maximum dramatic effect. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, white linen napkins folded into perfect triangles. A performance of family unity, directed by the matriarch herself. I pushed my untouched salmon around the plate, listening to Travis hold court at the head of the table. The investors are practically begging to get in on this, he said, gesturing with his wine glass. We're talking serious money here, life-changing money. How fascinating. I speared a piece of asparagus. And how many investors have actually signed on? Travis's smile flickered. Well, we're in preliminary discussions, which means none. I set down my fork. Just like your tech startup last year. Or was it the cryptocurrency venture? Patricia cleared her throat. Lydia, dear, this negativity isn't helpful. We're trying to have a nice family dinner. Are we? I looked around the table. Because it sounds like another sales pitch for destroying my father's legacy. Mark's hand found my knee under the table. A warning squeeze. I shrugged it off. Your father would have wanted you to be practical, Patricia said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. The property taxes alone will be covered by the trust he set up. I smiled thinly. But you knew that already, didn't you? Since you've been calling his accountant. The silence that followed was delicious. Patricia's face tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. Mark, she said finally, perhaps you should explain to your wife about family loyalty. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't you dare use him as your puppet again. Lydia. Mark started. No, let's talk about family loyalty. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the files I'd found on Dad's USB drive. Like the loyalty that made you cover Patricia's gambling debts 3 times in the last 5 years? Or the loyalty that had you sign personal guarantees for Travis's failed ventures? Travis's face went red. That's private family business. It became my business when you decided to steal my inheritance to fix your mistakes. I turned to Mark. Did you know about the second mortgage on our house? The one your mother convinced you to sign for last month? Mark's confusion wasn't feigned. What second mortgage? Show him the papers, Patricia. When she didn't move, I pulled out copies and slid them across the table. Your signature's a decent forgery, honey, but not perfect. The color drained from Mark's face as he read. Patricia set down her wine glass with a sharp click. Everything I've done has been for this family, she said. Sometimes difficult decisions. Save it. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. The will reading is Thursday. I suggest you all be there, especially you, Mark. You'll want to hear exactly what my father knew about your family's difficult decisions. Sit down, Patricia snapped. We're not finished. Oh, but we are. I dropped my napkin onto my plate. By the way, those investors Travis mentioned? They pulled out this morning. Seems someone sent them proof of his previous bankruptcies. Anonymous source, of course. Travis knocked over his wine glass, red spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. You vindictive bit. Travis! Patricia's voice could have frozen hell. I was already walking away when Mark caught up to me in the foyer. Lydia, wait. Please, we can talk about this. I turned to face him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for 12 years, who'd let his family poison everything we'd built. You know what hurts the most? My voice was steady, even as tears threatened. Dad tried to warn me about them years ago, but I defended you. Told him you were different, that you'd choose me when it mattered. I opened the front door. Guess we were both wrong. Where are you going? Home, to pack. I didn't look back. You can stay here with your real family. The papers will be ready to sign on Thursday. The door closed behind me with a final sounding click. In my car, I pulled out Dad's letter again, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. Remember, Butterfly? Sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages. I started the engine, Patricia's perfectly arranged dinner party falling away in my rearview mirror. Dad had given me everything I needed to bring them down. Now it was time to use it. The key stuck in the lock of Dad's front door. It always had. One firm bump with my hip, and I was inside the empty house, surrounded by echoes of his life. Family photos on the walls, his reading glasses still on the side table, the scent of pipe tobacco that never quite faded. I'd been avoiding this place since the funeral. Now I had no choice. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. 14 since last night's dinner disaster. I silenced it without reading. The study was exactly as Dad left it. Organized chaos that only he understood. I started with the filing cabinet, searching for anything that might help me understand the extent of the Bennett schemes. Third drawer down, I found it. A folder labeled Patricia. You shouldn't be here. I spun around. Mark stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes. He must have followed me. Neither should you. I clutched the folder tighter. How did you get in? I still have the spare key, from when we used to check on him. He stepped into the room, eyes landing on the folder. What are you looking for? The truth. For once. I opened the folder, spreading documents across Dad's desk. Like why your mother's been making monthly payments to someone named James Carlton for the past year. Mark's face changed. Just slightly, but enough. You don't want to go down this road. Why? Because I might find out what really happened to the environmental survey? The one that mysteriously changed its findings right after these payments started? He reached for the papers. I pulled them back. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't make this worse. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. By helping them steal everything my father worked for? You don't understand. Then make me understand. I slammed my hand on the desk. Tell me why you're choosing them over me. Over us. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Mark sank into Dad's leather chair, suddenly looking old. They're broke, he said quietly. All of them. Mom's gambling debts, Travis's failed businesses, they're about to lose everything. This land, it's their last chance. And that justifies fraud? No, but... He ran a hand through his hair. Mom said it would be clean. Just a simple development deal. Nobody getting hurt. I pulled out another document from the folder. Tell that to James Carlton, the environmental inspector your mother's been bribing. He was Dad's friend. 20 years on the preservation board together. Mark's head snapped up. What? Dad knew Mark. He knew everything. I spread out more papers, bank statements, emails, photographs. He documented all of it. Every bribe, every forged document, every backroom deal. He was building a case. Against my family? Against anyone who tried to destroy his life's work. I touched a photo of Dad and me on his desk, taken on the land we were fighting over. Including his own daughter's husband, apparently. Mark stood, reaching for me. Lydia. The front door slammed. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. In here, Mark called out before I could stop him. Travis appeared in the doorway, followed by Patricia. Their presence felt like a violation. Well, Patricia said, eyeing the scattered documents. I see we're all having a family meeting. Get out. My voice was ice. All of you. We can't do that, dear. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not when you're clearly planning to cause trouble with private family matters. Private? I held up the Carlton file. Should we ask the ethics board how private this is? Travis stepped forward, but Patricia raised a hand to stop him. Think carefully about your next move, Lydia. Family loyalty works both ways. It would be a shame if Mark had to choose sides. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to defend me. He stared at the floor. He already has. I gathered the documents, my hands steady despite everything. Thursday's will reading just got more interesting. As I walked out, I heard Patricia say something about damage control. But it was Mark's silence that followed me, heavy as a funeral bell. Dad's final letter burned in my pocket. Remember, Butterfly, when you're ready to strike, make sure you have all your weapons ready. I did now. And Thursday couldn't come soon enough. The construction equipment arrived at dawn. I watched from my car as yellow machines crawled across Dad's land like insects, their diesel engines shattering the morning quiet. Travis stood among them, gesturing with a rolled-up set of plans, playing developer. My phone lit up. Mark again. Please come home. We can fix this. I turned off the phone and pulled out the USB drive. One file remained unopened, a video dated 3 days before Dad died. My hands shook as I connected it to my laptop. Dad's face filled the screen, gaunt but determined. Butterfly, if you're watching this, they've started moving equipment onto the land. Patricia always was impatient. He coughed, then continued. There's something I never told you about the trust. Something that changes everything. A tap on my window made me jump. James Carlton stood there, the corrupted environmental inspector, looking nothing like his confident photos in Dad's files. I got out, keeping the car between us. Brave of you to show your face. I needed to warn you. He glanced nervously at the construction site. Patricia Bennett, she's not just planning a parking lot. The environmental survey I falsified? It wasn't about the endangered species, it was about what's under the land. What are you talking about? Mineral rights. Your father discovered a car door slammed nearby. Carlton flinched and backed away. Just check the geological surveys from 1985, before they disappear too. He hurried off as Patricia's Mercedes pulled up. She emerged looking immaculate as always, but something was different. An edge of desperation in her eyes. Lovely morning for a chat with disgraced officials, isn't it? She joined me at the fence line. Though I suppose James has nothing left to lose now. Unlike some of us. What's under the land, Patricia? She didn't flinch. Progress, opportunity, a future for this family if you'd just stop fighting us. It's not your family's future to take. No? She turned to face me fully. Tell me, dear, how do you think your father afforded to maintain this property all these years? Those conservation grants barely covered taxes. The implication hit like a physical blow. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why he never developed this land, despite numerous offers. Why he was so obsessed with keeping people off it. She smiled thinly. Your father had secrets too, Lydia. Dark ones. The kind that destroy legacies. Get out. My voice shook with rage. Get your equipment and get out or I'll... You'll what? Expose us all? She laughed softly. Oh, my dear. You really should watch that video to the end. She walked away, leaving me with the laptop screen still frozen on Dad's face. Behind me, the machines continued their invasion, tearing into the earth like wounds. I forced myself to press play again. The trust has a condition, Dad continued on screen. One I never told anyone. If the land is developed within 20 years of my death, everything goes to the Bennett family. I had to make sure. He started coughing again, harder this time. The video ended there. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mark. Mom told me about the trust condition. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. The machines growled louder. Travis was directing them toward the old oak grove, Dad's favorite spot. Each bite of their metal teeth felt like they were tearing into me instead of the earth. I opened Dad's final letter again, searching for guidance, for any hint he'd prepared me for this. The words blurred through my tears. Sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages. But which betrayal? Patricia's schemes? Mark's weakness? Or something darker, buried in the land itself? The oak trees started falling, their ancient trunks crashing to earth like thunder. And with them fell my last illusions about simple revenge or justice. This wasn't just about saving Dad's legacy anymore. This was about uncovering the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I started the car. I had until tomorrow's will reading to find those 1985 surveys. To understand what Dad had really been protecting or hiding all these years. The machines kept eating the earth behind me, hungry for whatever secrets lay beneath. The 1985 geological survey lay on Mr. Phillips' conference table like a bomb waiting to detonate. Around it sat the Bennett family. Patricia perfectly poised, Travis fidgeting, Mark pale and drawn. The will reading would start in 10 minutes. Rare earth elements, I said, breaking the silence. That's what's under the land. That's what this has all been about. Patricia didn't blink. Your father knew. All those years preaching conservation, he was sitting on a fortune. And you knew too. That's why you pushed Mark to marry me. The words tasted like ash. A decade-long con. Marriage of convenience? Travis smirked. Welcome to the family business. Mark stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. I never knew. Sit down, Mark. Patricia's voice could have frozen hell. You've done enough damage. I spread out more documents across the table. Dad's trust condition wasn't about protecting the land. It was about exposing you. All of you. I turned to Mark. Including my loving husband. Lydia, please. The trust transfers everything to the Bennetts if development starts within 20 years, I continued. But it also triggers an automatic audit of everything, including those shell companies you've been using to hide Patricia's gambling debts. Travis's smirk vanished. Patricia's mask cracked just slightly. You really think you can threaten us? She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder. Your father's hands weren't clean either. These documents prove he knew about the minerals for years, took payments to keep quiet. More forgeries? Ask James Carlton. Oh wait, you can't. He had an unfortunate accident this morning. Car brake failure. The room tilted. Carlton's warning cut short. Another piece of Dad's legacy, erased. Mr. Phillips entered, carrying the official will documents. Before he could speak, the conference room door burst open. 2 federal agents stepped in, badges out. Patricia Bennett? Travis Bennett? You're under investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and in connection with the death of James Carlton. What? Travis jumped up. Lydia, what did you do? I hadn't done anything. This wasn't part of my plan. Patricia stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. Well played, Harold, she murmured. Then louder, I invoke my right to counsel. As the agents read their rights, Mark grabbed my arm. Tell me you didn't know about Carlton. I pulled away. Like you didn't know about the mineral rights? I loved you, he whispered. That part was real. Was it? Or was that just another pretty package hiding a betrayal? The agents led Patricia and Travis out. Mark followed, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Me too. I watched him go, feeling nothing but hollow. Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. There's one more document. Your father left strict instructions to be opened only after everything else came to light. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Dad's handwriting shaky but clear. My butterfly, by now you know the truth. About the land, about the Bennetts, about me. The minerals were my curse, my secret shame. I took their money, convinced myself it was for the greater good. But the guilt ate at me until I couldn't bear it. I'm sorry for putting you through this. Sorry for not trusting you with the truth sooner. The trust condition wasn't just about exposing them. It was about forcing me to face my own sins. The land is yours now. Truly yours, free of all our shadows. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. All my love, Dad. The paper blurred. All my carefully planned revenge, my righteous anger, and in the end, there were no heroes. Just broken people, buried secrets, and a piece of land that had poisoned us all. Outside the window, I could see the construction equipment, still waiting to tear up the earth. To expose everything we'd tried to hide. The question was, what would grow from the ashes of all we'd destroyed? The construction site looked like an open wound in the morning light. Yellow machines stood frozen, their work halted by federal tape and uniformed officers. I walked past them, Dad's final letter burning in my pocket, toward the gathering crowd. Patricia stood with her lawyer, still elegant despite everything. Travis paced nearby, shooting venomous glances at Mark, who stood apart from them all. Mrs. Bennett. Dr. Chen from the Environmental Protection Agency stepped forward. We're ready to begin the inspection. Patricia's lawyer intervened. My client maintains all proper procedures were followed. Like James Carlton's proper procedures? I pulled out my phone, played the recording Carlton had secretly made the day before his death. Patricia's voice filled the air, discussing payoffs and cover-ups. That's inadmissible, the lawyer started. In court, maybe. I nodded toward the EPA team. But they can still inspect every inch of this land, every sample, every test Carlton falsified. Unless what? Travis snapped. I pulled out another document. Sign over your development rights. All of them. The land goes into a conservation trust. Permanently. Or what? Patricia's mask finally cracked. You'll destroy us? Like your father tried to? No. I moved closer, voice low. I'll let you destroy yourselves, The federal investigation, the environmental violations, Carlton's death, it'll all come out. Every dirty secret, every betrayal. Is that what you want? You self-righteous little... Travis started forward, but Mark caught his arm. Enough. Mark's voice was steady. Sign it, Mom. Patricia turned on him, snake quick. After everything I've done for you? You mean to me? He moved to stand beside me. Sign it, or I'll testify about everything, including what really happened to Carlton. The silence stretched tight as a wire. Then Patricia laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You really are Harold's daughter. She snatched the document, scrawled her signature. There, you've won. Happy? This was never about winning. I handed the paper to Dr. Chen. It was about truth, all of it. As if on cue, the EPA team began their work, marking areas for testing. Patricia's lawyer led her away, already discussing damage control. Travis followed, defeated. Mark stayed. I knew, he said quietly. Not everything. Not at first, but I knew enough. Should have chosen you sooner. Why didn't you? Same reason your father kept his secrets. Sometimes the truth feels more dangerous than lies. I touched the earth, feeling its warmth. Somewhere beneath us lay the minerals that had poisoned so many lives. But above them... Help me with something? I pulled a seedling from my bag, an oak sapling from Dad's greenhouse. Mark watched as I began digging. Your father's favorite, he said softly. He left instructions. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. I placed the seedling in the hole. Want to help? Together, we covered its roots with soil. Behind us, the EPA teams worked, uncovering truth after buried truth. But here, in this small patch of earth, we were planting something new. What happens now? Mark asked. I watched the sapling sway in the breeze. The land goes into trust. The investigation continues, and we... And we? We learn to grow something honest from all these lies. I stood, dusting off my hands. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. He echoed Dad's favorite phrase, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. The morning sun caught the sapling's leaves, making them glow like emeralds. Somewhere, I thought I could hear Dad laughing. Not at our pain or our mistakes, but at the simple truth we'd all forgotten. That even poisoned earth can nurture new life if you're brave enough to plant it. I took Mark's hand, and together we walked away from the machines, the investigators, and all our buried secrets. Behind us, the little oak tree reached for the sky, its roots already growing deep into the earth we'd fought so hard to save. The oak sapling had grown 3 inches when Patricia's sentencing came down. I sat in the courtroom's back row, watching her maintain perfect posture as the judge detailed her crimes. Travis had already taken his plea deal, turning state's evidence against their other conspirators. Mark squeezed my hand as his mother was led away. Neither of us spoke. Some wounds needed silence to heal. Outside, autumn painted the courthouse steps in gold and red. A reporter approached, notebook ready, but Mark stepped between us. No comment. Mrs. Bennett? She persisted. Any response to the EPA's findings about the rare earth deposits? I paused. Plant a tree. See what grows. We left her puzzling over that, walking to where Mr. Phillips waited with the final paperwork. The land transfer to the Conservation Trust would be complete by sunset. Your father would be proud, he said, holding out his pen. Would he? I thought of his final confession, the guilt he'd carried, the secrets he'd buried beneath all that protected land, but also the legacy he'd left. Not just the earth itself, but the truth he'd forced us all to face. One last thing. Mr. Phillips produced a small package. Found this while clearing your father's office. It was marked for after the truth comes out. Inside lay a single butterfly chrysalis in a small glass case and a note. My butterfly. By the time you read this, you'll understand why I named you that. Not for your beauty or delicacy, but for your capacity to transform. To emerge stronger from whatever cocoon life wraps you in. The land was my chrysalis, my shell of secrets and shame. but you've broken free of it. Made something better from my mistakes. The minerals will stay buried. Let them. Some treasures are worth more underground, feeding roots that reach for the sky. All my love, Dad. I handed the note to Mark. He read it silently, then looked at the chrysalis. It's still alive. It's waiting. I signed the trust documents, feeling something settle in my chest. Like we all were. The drive to the land took us past Patricia's empty house, its windows dark. Travis's car was gone from the driveway, probably sold to pay legal fees. The family that had schemed for so long to possess everything was left with nothing but consequences. But revenge tasted different than I'd expected. Not sweet, not bitter, just real, like fresh earth after rain. We parked by the oak sapling. Other seedlings had joined it now, planted by local conservation volunteers. The construction equipment scars were healing, covered by new growth. I've been thinking, Mark said, touching a leaf, about what your father wrote, about transforming. And maybe we all were chrysalises, Mom, Travis, me, all wrapped up in lies we thought would protect us. He looked at me, but only some of us chose to break free. I took out the glass case, studying the chrysalis inside. Its dark shell had begun to turn transparent, revealing hints of wing patterns beneath. We should release it here, I said, when it's ready. How will we know when? I thought of Dad's words about truth and transformation, about secrets buried and revelations unearthed, about the choice between staying wrapped in comfortable lies or fighting free into uncertain light. We'll know. I placed the case gently between the saplings. Some things have to happen in their own time. Mark's hand found mine again. Behind us, the sun painted long shadows across the land. Not the darkness of secrets anymore, but the simple shade of growing things reaching toward light. The chrysalis waited, neither past nor future, but perfectly present. Like the minerals beneath our feet, like the truth we'd fought so hard to uncover, like the love that had survived betrayal's bitter season. Some transformations couldn't be rushed. Some revenges looked like redemption in the end. I leaned against Mark, feeling the wind move through the young trees. Dad's voice whispered in their leaves. Plant something beautiful where we buried our secrets. We had, and now we would watch it grow.